Alrighty, the Vietnam War. Now, the Vietnam War, simply put, is the Truman Doctrine in action. Okay, so it's where the United States states that whenever a country is in fear or in threat of falling to communism, the United States is going to get involved. That is exactly what's going to happen and lead to and really cause the Vietnam War. Now, during this war, 58,000 Americans are killed. 61% of the Americans are 21 or younger. Now, this isn't even talking about the number of Vietnamese who are going to be killed in this war. We'll get into that a little bit later on, especially when we talk about some of the protests that come up as a result of this war. The important thing to realize is there's a large number of Americans who are killed, very young people. We'll go into why this is really significant in just a little bit. Additionally, it's important to understand that when you talk about Vietnam, Vietnam has a tense history of tension against foreigners. Okay, they do not want to be occupied by someone else. During World War II, the Japanese were going to come in here and occupy Vietnam. Japanese, when they were occupying different regions, did a number of really horrible things. The French were also here occupying Indochina, this region right down here before or like after World War II, right through here, and the Vietnamese are going to really go and try to throw them out. So they're really not fond of foreigners being in their country. They do not want them there, and they're willing to fight to get them out. Additionally, there's going to be the Geneva Peace Accords. Now, the Geneva Peace Accords is a setup trying to really solve this situation in Vietnam. How do we make it better? How do we stop this from getting worse? And they're going to set up two different Vietnams along the 17th parallel. Okay, so the demarcation line set up in July of 1954, as you can see in the graphic right here. So the north part of Vietnam is going to be considered communist. The south part of Vietnam is going to be capitalist. Why? Because of the United States going in to stop free elections. Now, within the Geneva Peace Accords, can't speak right over here, within the Geneva Peace Accords, it's set up that the people of Vietnam would be able to elect representatives to represent them to form their governments. Now, the United States was not a fan of this, primarily because they were afraid that South Vietnam, if they could choose their own leaders, were going to elect a communist government. The Americans did not want this, so they're going to actually intervene and stop this free election from happening. Why? Because they did not want a communist South and communist North Vietnam. Now, this is also the domino theory in action. Now, the domino theory is something important you want to know. Simply states that if one country falls to communism, then other countries can also fall to communism. We got the Soviet Union, which previously was Russia, was not a communist state. They got the revolution in 1917. Now they become a communist country. Now we've got China in 1949, previously Republic of China, going to have a revolution. Now they're going to be communist. Now we look at North Vietnam becoming communist. Pretty soon South Vietnam might become communist. Then we're going to have Indonesia become communist all the way down to Australia, the Philippines. You don't know what's going to happen. Okay, we have to stop communism, or all the countries are going to become communism. Now, this in and of itself is the slippery slope argument, which really is a fallacy. Meaning it actually doesn't hold up, logically speaking. However, this was the prevalent fear of the Americans at this time period, and is really going to encourage them to get involved in this conflict. What's going to happen, though, is Diem is going to become president of the Republic of Vietnam. Okay, so he's going to be kind of the puppet leadership put in place really by the United States of America, supported by the United States of America, simply because he is opposed to the communists. Okay, he's going to be very repressive of the communists, really going to go and put them down in any single way possible. A lot of the Buddhist monks in Vietnam are going to protest him by standing outside of government offices, soaking themselves actually in gasoline and then lighting themselves on fire as a form of protest. Okay, this is going to get very, very bad very, very quick. But he is going to be supported by the United States of America. The people of Vietnam, though, opposed to Diem, are going to form the National Liberation Front, the NLO. Now, the NLO is simply pro-communist and anti-communist, unified against Diem. Okay, they're not communists, they're not anti-communists, really going to fight for one thing or another. They just want Diem gone. They do not like Diem. They think he's a bad leader. He is bad for their country, and they do not want him there. The Americans are going to be opposed to the NLO because it's going to be threatening their puppet leader in Diem. However, this is ultimately going to lead to a number of different issues, causing a series of issues and problems for the Americans when it comes to Vietnam. Now, Kennedy is worried about the South. He wants to support Diem. He wants to be able to keep South Vietnam capitalist, not allow them to fall to communism. So he is going to send reporters to assess the situation in the South. Now, these reporters are military officials who are going there pretty much, this is the first set of troops going to Vietnam, trying to assess the situation. How do we make this not worse? What do we do to kind of keep tensions calm in Vietnam? Then in 1963, there's going to be a military coup against Diem. This is going to happen. He is going to be overthrown. Him and his brother are overthrown and killed. And this is kind of really the straw that breaks the camel's back, with the Americans having any hope of maintaining the independence of South Vietnam. Kennedy is going to be assassinated, and then just a few months later, moving on to the Gulf of Tonkin, which is going to become President Johnson's situation. Now, the Gulf of Tonkin is a bay up in North Vietnam. International waterways controlled by really no one because they're international waterways, but there's going to be an incident going here. We've talked about this in the packet you read in class. There's going to be the South Vietnamese, supported by the Americans, are going to launch a raid upon the North Vietnamese. The North Vietnamese are going to respond by firing torpedoes at the USS Maddox. The Americans are going to respond by sinking those two North Vietnamese ships. Thus is going to really kind of start the escalation of the Vietnam War. Now, as a result of this, President Johnson and Defense Secretary Robert McNamara argue that the need to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. Now, the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution has some major ramifications that are going to come out of this, but primarily it's going to give POTUS, or the President of the United States, to use a shorter acronym, broad war powers. So the President of the United States now has the ability to do a number of different things militarily without approval of Congress, which is still going to be used even up into today. This is going to be important, though. They're really going to try to control the scenario and the situation here to make sure the public hears the public needs to hear. In reality, this was kind of the Americans firing upon the North Vietnamese ships with really not that much rationale and that much reasoning. Really would probably not be considered a just war by most standards. However, this is what people know at the time. They're going to give the president this power with the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, thus starting the escalation of the Vietnam War. Lastly, we're going to talk about some of the different operations that come on within the Vietnam War. Number one is Operation Rolling Thunder. As you can see right here, Operation Rolling Thunder is a massive bombing campaign by the Americans to simply drop loads and loads of bombs on the North Vietnamese, trying to stop the communists from advancing in this dense jungle-like warfare. It's important to understand at this time, though, it's not traditional warfare. It is the Americans fighting guerrilla war against guerrilla warfare by the North Vietnamese. Initially, is going to be white phosphorus and napalm bombs. Phosphorus bombs are considered a chemical weapon, are not allowed to be used anymore. The United States can be dropping these. They produce a thick white smoke, allowing for smoke cover. Additionally, phosphorus bombs cause a really lot of damage. Okay, the pain from the smoke when it burns you causes third-degree burns, and the chemical of phosphorus will get into your bloodstream and kill you. Napalm is like a gelatin kind of substance that hits and stays on fire and sticks to you. So it's kind of like dropping oatmeal on your foot. It's going to be hot and burning, and it really doesn't want to fall off, causing a number of issues. And lastly, they're going to have Operation Ranch Hand. Operation Ranch Hand, which is simply Agent Orange. Agent Orange is a pesticide, a defoliant, which is going to be dropped to kill the forest and the jungles in South Vietnam, giving less cover to the North Vietnamese, making it easier for the United States to fight back and attack them, and ultimately leading them to try to win the war. If you have any questions, please comment down below. Otherwise, good luck.